Hi, this is Rhonda. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to be talking about the proposed sales and use tax for the city of Glenwood, Arkansas. This discussion is my own personal opinions. I'm not steered either way by anyone, and those of you who know me know that I form my own opinions based upon facts as I see them. So during my last YouTube video, I discussed and basically did a general explanation of the proposed tax usage. And I'll put the link in the description below if you want to go back and watch it. Okay. And by the way, I do have notes here so I can stay on track. So if I look down, I'm just trying to remain on track. Okay. So in that last video, I'd indicated that if I had to go to the polls last week and cast a vote, it would be yes to refund or pay off the 2004 and 2006 bonds or loans. And I'd vote yes to reallocate the same 1.5 cent sales tax. No increase, just a payoff and reallocation of that same tax. Now, last week, there was a public forum or open type question and answer meeting held at City Hall. And now I'm going to be honest with you. I feel like my mind is a big teeter-totter. One part of it says vote yes and yes. Then the other one says vote no. So what I thought I'd do is write down the pros and the cons and try to organize my thoughts and share them with you. So first I'm going to review the cons. So these are the things that come to mind when I'd say, no, I wouldn't vote for that tax. So these are just my thoughts. And I'm going to go over the pros in just a few minutes because I have pros and cons. But first, I want to talk about the cons. So the interest rate, and these are the things that I learned from going to the open forum meeting, okay? The interest rates will be higher on the new bonds because it takes the rates of today. So the interest rates on the new bonds are higher than the existing 2004 and 2006 bonds or loans. So the cost to borrow the money increases. The interest rate is an unknown because we won't know what the interest rate is actually going to be until the bonds are voted in and are secured. Who knows what the interest rate's going to be at that time? It makes me really nervous. Really nervous. You can't lock in a rate like you can a home mortgage. If you go to try to buy a house, you go to the lender and you can lock in those rates. You can't do that on these bonds. The interest rate is at the time you secure the bond. That's an unknown. Okay, that's number one. So number two, con, why I would vote no. Okay. Just like you would finance or refinance a house, there are expenses involved, kind of like closing costs. These are paid with the loan proceeds. And these costs are rolled into the loan, which means we're financing these items. These expenses are expenses like bond insurance. Most people don't know that you have to buy bond insurance when you take out a bond. The insurance protects the bondholder or the investors in the event that the city of Glenwood defaults on the bond or the loan. It's a one-time premium, And in this case, City of Glenwood's case, be $209,000. And I'm getting this number straight from the Stevens Public Finance handout that he gave at the meeting. So there are bond attorney fees that are involved, bond underwriting fees that are involved, trustee fees, and publication cost. I don't really know what publication costs are. I imagine they have to do a certain amount of publishing in newspapers or something to that effect. But the attorney fees, the underwriting cost, the trustee fees, and the publication cost is approximately $204,500. So you're looking at a little bit over $400,000 just in closing cost or expenses associated with that bond. So you're rolling it into the financing. Okay. The question that I have is, do we really need to incur these costs? I understand that there's a cost of doing business, there's a cost of underwriting the loans, but it is an added expense that the taxpayers have to be aware of when making a decision. Number 3, con, or why I would vote against it. Now remember, we're going to have some pros, but just stay with me. The 2004 bond balance will be paid off at the end of 2037. The 2006 bond will be paid off at the end of 2027. The new bond of $9,305,000 includes the payoff of those two bonds, $4 million sewer construction, and cost of issuance that I just described, the cost of doing business. That loan or bond won't be paid off until 2053. So we're beginning a whole new cycle, a whole new loan. Okay, so 30 years. I'm not feeling too good about that because we're leaving this debt to our young adults, just like we are on a national level. And that discussion is for another time. Okay? The fourth con. This new bond will include paying off the 2004 and 2006 bonds and obtaining a new or an additional $4 million to construct or for sewer improvements. Whoa, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. And here's the questions that I have on that $4 million. What exactly are the sewer improvements? And I realize that the current system is old, but what are the improvements? Are you going to replace some sections and not others? Are you going to repair some sections and not others? Is there a master plan of the planned improvements with a timeline? Has the city of Glenwood or Mr. A.L. Franks released specifications for the project so that requests for proposals or RFPs can be sent to contractors to estimate the bids for this project? How do we know that $4 million is the cost? Is this too much? Not enough? And I know at some point they talked about grants where, the state would come in and grant some money, and then there would be a match on the part of the city of Glenwood. But grants are never guaranteed. That's the thing. They're not guaranteed. So the question goes back to, is $4 million enough? Is it too much? Now, all of this might have been addressed, but I would like to see the specs, if there are any, and understand exactly how the $4 million cost for the project was arrived at, or $4 million plus a grant. How did we come up with these numbers? How did we come up with asking or requesting a $4 million bond? There has to be a benchmark for that, and that is the unknown. So those are the cons that I have right now. Some of them may be answered in a future public forum meeting, and I'm going to ask them. And unless I really missed it, and I might have, I really don't know what Mr. Frank's role is, as his role really hadn't been explained in a public meeting. Most citizens probably know him and the role that he and his firm plays, but as a newcomer to Glenwood, I honestly don't know. I don't know. So that's it for the cons. So let's move on to the pros. Okay. So in the teeter-totter of my mind, these are the pros. The ability to obtain additional funds with no change in the current tax rate of 1.5 cents imposed on the citizens of Glenwood. Yes, a longer term, but no change in the tax rate. And that's a good thing. Okay. So the next item is compliance with Act 605. Now, everyone keeps talking about Act 605 as if we all know what they're talking about. Okay. So I did a little research, and I'm going to take a step aside and kind of explain Act 605 in basic terms. Okay. Brief summary as I understand it. Act 605 is an act or a law of 2021 that requires oversight of retail water providers to make sure that they are solvent. In other words, it's the city charging an adequate amount for water and sewer so they can pay the bills for operations and maintenance. Okay, so they don't go in the hole. So effective July 1st, 2026, and every 5 years after, there's a required rate study that must be performed by an approved, unbiased rate study review provider. These providers are approved by the Arkansas Department of Agriculture, Natural Resources Division. And there's a list of these approved rate study providers online. Again, in a nutshell, the study determines if the rates charged for water and sewer by the city is enough to operate and maintain the system. If determined that it's not adequate, then mandatory rate increases are imposed. Okay. Act 605 says that when a municipal water system has 20% or more of its customer base outside of the city boundaries, the city must establish a non-voting advisory committee to represent the water users outside of the municipality. This allows representation to voice concerns, but with no vote. So it allows those citizens to be heard, but they don't have any voting rights. Act 605 also implements required training for required water providers. So with Act 605, we're going to have to be compliant. So in 2026, Glenwood's going to be subject to a rate study, okay, to make sure that we're providing adequate rates. So it's my understanding if the city of Glenwood goes ahead and completes repairs now, instead of the constant need for continual repairs, it will be in line with compliance and likely no rate increase. Okay, so just a side note, Act 605 states that if a provider operates a joint and integrated water and sewer system, that the rate study is on the entire system, water and sewer. This is the reason to improve the old water system with the new bond or loan. Okay, so it affects both. Okay, so really, if we're in compliance with 605 and we retain the same tax rate to get there, then there would be no rate increase on the water and sewer. Okay, so just to recap, a pro to voting yes is to pay off the bonds or refund those bonds, take the new bond out at no tax rate increase, and then if there's a yes to secure the new loan, do the additional sewer improvement with those funds. It avoids the mandatory increase in water and sewer if the city's in compliance. Okay, so those are my pros and cons. Last week in the open forum meeting, I asked if the voters could request funds from the 1.5 cent tax to go to specific areas, namely economic development and tourism, parks and recreations, streets, and animal control. A true allocation, not just the $1.50 on the water bill that we get each month, which, trust me, that is worth it. Okay. Jason Hawesclaw of Stevens Public Finance said that the tax allocations are all in increments of 1/8%, so that it could really get kind of messy accounting, and I can see that. If there were true tax allocations to these areas, and that it would be easier for the city council to allocate specific amounts to these areas in the annual budget, rather than committing that percentage to that area and not have the flexibility to move it around as you need it. Okay? So one thought that I had was, right now, there's a dedicated 1/2 cent to streets, maintaining our streets, and we need it. The new proposal lumps the streets, police department, and fire department into city general. So it really depends on what's placed in the budget for these specific areas or departments. So we're really taking away that allocation for streets and lumping it back into city general, and we would depend on our elected leaders to spend that money in a reasonable way. If the citizens of Glenwood want specific items included in the budget, my suggestion is to ask for it now. Get a commitment from your elected leaders so that these items are included in the 2024 budget. And in the long run, if you can get that commitment, it may depend on how you're going to vote on this tax. Okay? I want to give you another reminder. These are my own personal opinions. The comments are as I see them. So your council will be voting as to whether or not to hold a special election and if the bond issue is even placed on the ballot. Now is the time to ask your questions so that you can voice your opinions to your council members prior to their votes. Remember, your council should represent you. You are their constituent. They should not vote on their personal opinions. They should vote as a whole and represent you. Okay. The mayor and the council will actually be conducting another public forum on Monday, April 10th at 6 p.m. at City Hall, Glenwood City Hall. And this is your opportunity to ask questions directly to Jason Halsclaw with Stevens Public Finance. And I'm not sure if Miss Sarah Giamo with the Friday Law Firm will be there or not. She wasn't there last week, but and I don't know if she'll be there next week. But I will be there recording, and I will have it up on YouTube as soon as I can, which is typically that night. Okay? So, again, the pros and the cons right now, the verdict is out, as they say. I'm kind of, like I said, the teeter-totter in my mind keeps just kind of replaying this and just trying to figure out what would be best for Glenwood. And that's what it's all about. It's what the citizens want and what's best for Glenwood. I want to close with saying that knowledge is power. Ask all the questions you can now. Attend the meetings. There is nothing like attending the meeting in person. So I encourage you to come out. Again, April 10th, Glenwood City Hall, 6 p.m. And have a good rest of the day. And if you would, please like the video by clicking the thumbs up button below and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Peace.